Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up because what I'm about to show you tonight is not just another New York scandal. This is not just another socialist scheme, and it's definitely not just another political feud. No, this is the moment that the mask finally slipped. New York City is in full-blown panic as brand new mayor Zohran Mamdani, yes, the same man who ran on free buses and free groceries and free gasoline and free everything, has now been exposed in a web of Soros-funded political engineering, radical ideological networks, and a $1 million cash grab that his own voters say feels outright left. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, a resurfaced video dropped showing Mamdani speaking openly about the abolition of private property. Now, let me repeat that, guys. Abolish private property, not fix housing, not reform regulations, abolish private property. But that's not even the most explosive part, because as this entire machine starts unraveling, reports begin pouring into Washington that Mamdani has been caught using violent language and death threat rhetoric toward President Donald J. Trump. And let me tell you something, guys. In 2025, with President Trump back in the Oval Office, you do not threaten the President of the United States and walk away clean. Trump's reaction? Instant, furious, and absolutely historic. He went off publicly, privately, politically, warning that New York is about to become the test case for a radical socialist takeover fueled by billion-dollar foundations, extremist networks, and political operatives who think that the rules just don't apply to them. And as if the fire couldn't get any hotter, Marjorie Taylor Greene jumps into the chaos, accusing Trump of putting her life in danger after he labeled her a traitor. Now, the MAGA movement itself is splitting at the seams, adding a whole new layer of volatility to an already burning national moment. Now, tonight, I ain't holding back because what is happening in New York is it's not local anymore. This is not isolated. This is the blueprint, the Soros blueprint for how radicals plan to seize power city by city, state by state, and yes, even influence the heart of Washington. So stick with me, guys, because by the end of today's video, you're going to understand exactly why President Trump snapped, why Mamdani's $1 million scheme is only the beginning, and why America is just one bad election away from finding out exactly what abolish private property really means. Hit the like button, subscribe. Let's get into this. Okay, so right after the reports came out about Mamdani using what many are calling death threat adjacent rhetoric toward President Trump, New York City went into a full state of panic. I mean, you could feel it in the streets. People weren't arguing about politics anymore. They were whispering about danger. Public backlash surged almost instantly, and city officials quietly admitted that they had never seen anything escalate this fast. So by the morning, the White House was fully involved, and under President Trump 2025, national security protocols, any hint of violent political rhetoric toward the president is treated as a direct threat to the nation. So Trump didn't wait. No. So the moment that the reports hit his desk, he responded with the kind of fury only Trump can deliver. Insiders say that he slammed the door on the Oval Office, demanding a briefing, and immediately classified Mamdani as a manufactured threat, not an organic political figure, but the product of a radical network built behind the scenes. And Trump warned NYC officials point blank that America will not tolerate ideological infiltration, not in this moment and not under his watch. So his message was unmistakable. If New York won't confront this, the federal government will. Now, it didn't take long for the regret to set in. All across the city, New Yorkers started realizing the free buses, the frozen rent, the grocery store fantasy, none of it was real. It was all a lie. It was all fabrication. In fact, the breaking point came when a young man approached a city bus driver and asked, "Hey, aren't buses supposed to be free now?" The driver turned, laughed, and said, "That's never going to happen." That was a freaking bus driver saying that. That's NTA for you. So that clip spread like wildfire, combined with Mamdani's early post-election moves. I mean, the city's mood flipped from hopeful to betrayed. People began admitting that they had been fooled, bamboozled, and the outrage just keeps on building. So now, before we go any deeper, let's pause right here and let's talk directly to the folks who are watching this show right now, because what I'm about to say, it hits home for a lot of you. Now, deep down, you already know if your Medicare plan isn't right? I mean, like, you can feel it every time you open a bill, every time you wonder if you're really covered, every time you get a little knot in your stomach thinking something about this just doesn't feel right. Well, this is exactly why I partner with Chapter. They don't guess, they don't push, they just confirm what your gut's already been telling you, and they help you to fix it for free for the Ron Yates community, of course. Now, one of our viewers, she said, "I knew something was off. I mean, Chapter proved it and saved me money." And this is what they do, guys. They find what's wrong, they make it right, and they give you peace again. So let me ask you this. Why ignore what you already feel? Now, most people aren't ignoring it anymore. In fact, they're trusting their instincts and they're calling the phone number right there at the bottom of your screen at 909-563-8279, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. And don't take my word for it. I mean, listen to the people who already made the call. So Brenda Mathis said, Chapter saved me $714 a year. Bob, he said, I called Chapter and they helped me out. Excellent. Thanks, Ron. All right, guys. So let's get back to this. Okay. So the deeper investigators looked, the more coordinated Mamdani's rise appeared. Conservative outlets echoing the viral Fox investigation traced his path from campus activism to a political machine built through George Soros linked foundations and progressive nonprofits. I mean, this wasn't some organic young grassroots movement. No, this was a well-funded assembly line of political engineering. Groups like SJP, Empower, and MPage played key roles, grooming him, elevating him, and mobilizing massive resources on his behalf. Behind the scenes, nonprofits acted like campaign arms, turning Mamdani into the polished movement candidate New Yorkers thought that they had discovered on their own. Then came the whistleblowers. Several IRS complaints were filed alleging that Soros-linked 501c3 charities funneled tax-deductible donations into a 501c4 political group or multiple political groups that actively supported Mamdani's campaign. Actively supported Mamdani's campaign, guys. Can you believe this, guys? So investigators describe it as a nonprofit laundering pipeline designed to skirt federal limits on partisan activity. The filings included financial trails, IRS forms, and internal memos that critics say prove the operation was anything but grassroots. That's why conservative analysts now call Mamdani the prototype of a Soros manufactured candidate, a political product assembled by a network that hides behind the label of charity. Now, digging even further, investigators uncovered an ideological ecosystem surrounding Mamdani, one built from alliances with radical imams, hard-left activist groups, and political organizers who share a common anti-police, anti-border, anti-property worldview. Now, some of these figures, they have made statements that alarmed national security officials within the Trump administration, especially when paired with Mamdani's rise to executive power in America's largest city. Conservative outlets argue that this network didn't just support him, they shaped him. And if that is true, then New York City isn't dealing with a rogue socialist mayor. It's dealing with a coordinated ideological project. So then came the video that truly set the internet on fire. I mean, it practically broke the internet. A resurfaced clip showed Mamdani openly discussing the abolition of private property, not reform, not regulation, abolition. Conservative accounts like RNC Research and End Wokeness blasted it everywhere, warning Americans that this wasn't progressivism, this was a textbook Marxism play. Within hours, the clip gained millions of views, and constitutional scholars were already debating the economic catastrophe such a policy would trigger. Now, for many New Yorkers, that was the moment that the truth hit. This wasn't a mayor, this was an ideological revolution in disguise. And as if the property abolition clip wasn't bad enough, another video resurfaced where Mamdani said the quiet part out loud. The city's taking over the building. I mean, this wasn't hypothetical. He outlined a process where fines would escalate, the city would intervene, repairs would be made without the owner's approval, and if compliance didn't follow, the government would seize the property. Critics immediately drew comparisons to authoritarian regimes like Cuba, Venezuela, and the old Soviet bloc. So inside the Trump administration, legal teams reportedly began preparing federal responses, warning that property confiscation violates constitutional protections. Now, ladies and gentlemen, something big is happening right now in Trump's America. While Biden's cronies are still trying to tax your savings into oblivion, the Trump economy is being fueled by innovation, sound money, and American strength. And one company just made a move that could redefine what it means to bet on the future of Bitcoin and US dominance. Now, guys, I'm talking about Matador Technologies, and yes, today's video is sponsored on behalf of Matador Technologies, currently listed on the TSX Venture Exchange under ticker symbol MATA.V. Now, here's why this is huge. You see, Matador just secured a $100 million US convertible note facility to accelerate its Bitcoin treasury strategy, and they've already drawn down the first $10.5 million. The entire process of this capital is exclusively to buy Bitcoin, not tech gadgets, not stock buybacks, pure Bitcoin accumulation. Now, think of it like this. Just as President Trump brought manufacturing back to America, Matador is bringing financial sovereignty back to the people. They're building a corporate fortress around Bitcoin, the one asset that globalists can't manipulate. And get this, guys, they're not stopping at 82 BTC. Matador's goal is to hit 1,000 Bitcoin by 2026 and a staggering 6,000 by 2027, ultimately aiming to hold 1% of Bitcoin's total supply. That is the kind of long-term vision Trump himself would probably call huge. They've also filed a $500 million shelf prospectus, giving them flexibility to raise capital quickly as they expand, just like Trump leverages opportunity when the timing's right. So yes, the company is taking calculated risk. Their convertible notes are collateralized by Bitcoin itself with a 1.x coverage ratio. But that's what separates leaders from followers. When others hesitate, visionaries act. In a world where fiat is failing and governments print money like confetti, companies like Matador are positioning themselves exactly where Trump's America is headed, towards sound money, hard assets, and financial independence. Now remember, I'm not an investment advisor. This video should not be considered financial advice. Always do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. But make no mistake, when you see a company like Matador Technologies going all in on Bitcoin, that's not speculation, that's conviction. Because the future of freedom, it's built on assets the swamp can't control. Now, Mamdani didn't rise on charisma alone. He climbed on this wish list of radical policies that sounded utopian to some and apocalyptic to others. He promised rent freezes across the city, fare-free transit, government-run grocery stores, and massive tax hikes aimed specifically at the rich and white neighborhoods. Does that sound racist to anyone to you? Y'all let me know what you think about that. So critics called it an economic collapse package, warning that it would drive out businesses, destroy the tax base, and accelerate the city's decline. Now, with none of these promises materializing in the city facing chaos, those once seduced voters are realizing the true cost of political fantasies. And one of the most infuriating moments for New Yorkers was this video of Mamdani posted right after his victory, smiling into the camera and saying, "Remember how I told you a few months ago to stop sending me money? You can start again." The arrogance stunned people. I mean, how do you beg for donations after spending months promising free everything? Does that make any sense to anybody? Especially when critics say he was already buoyed by Soros-linked funding. The contradiction was just so blatant that the clip instantly went viral, symbolizing the bait and switch many voters already now feel trapped in. After reopening donations, Mamdani's team announced he had raised a staggering $1 million from New Yorkers for the transition. But voters quickly realized that they weren't funding policy, they were funding him. A transition doesn't require $1 million unless something else is happening behind the scenes. Critics blasted this move as illicit, calling it political shakedown disguised as civic participation, and the betrayal hit even harder because these are the same people that he lured in with promises of free buses, frozen rent, and government help. Now they're left wondering where their money actually went. Now the reaction was immediate, it was emotional. All over social media, New Yorkers posted videos and comments saying the same thing. We were lied to. They admitted they fell for the slogans, the freebies, the promises that seemed too good to be true because, well, they were too good to be true. In fact, voters expressed anger, embarrassment, even fear about what they ushered into power. Some people said that they felt scammed, others said that they feel unsafe, and many say the $1 million grab confirmed everything critics warned about. The sense of betrayal has become its own viral moment and is growing louder and louder by the day. Now, the situation, it escalated dramatically when reports surfaced suggesting Mamdani's movement had used rhetoric interpreted as death threats against President Trump. Now, during his victory speech, observers noted a tone of hostility so sharp that clips quickly circulated online, prompting outrage and fear. Under Trump 2025 administration, any threat toward the president triggers immediate investigation, and the Secret Service took interest almost immediately. Officials publicly stated that they are monitoring the situation, and historically, this level of scrutiny only appears when the rhetoric is severe enough to raise real security alarms. Overnight, the issue went from political to national security. So the scandal isn't happening in a vacuum. Trump and the conservative commentators out here, they're warning that what we're seeing in New York represents a broader ideological radicalization sweeping major cities. They argue that groups aligned with extreme anti-police, anti-capitalist, and anti-property positions have penetrated city governments, pushing agendas far outside mainstream American values. Trump himself said New York City is ground zero for dark forces trying to reshape America. Analysts predict destabilization if these networks gain more local power. The Mamdani situation is now being viewed as a warning. America's cities could become testing grounds for radical experimentation. And if the national tension around Mamdani wasn't enough, the political world ignited again when Marjorie Taylor Greene claimed that Trump calling her a traitor had put her life in danger. Fox News covered her statement extensively, reporting that private security firms had reached out with warnings. The America First movement suddenly found itself fractured, with supporters torn between loyalty to Trump and sympathy to MTG, which began as a disagreement spiraled into accusations, hurt feelings, and a sense that internal conflict was weakening the movement at the exact moment that America needed unity the most. So MTG didn't help her case when she made appearances on CNN, CBS, and even The View, of all places to make an appearance, the same platforms that spent years attacking Trump. Supporters watched in disbelief as she laughed along with commentators who mock the president daily. Trump saw it as a confirmation that she had shifted left. Drop a left down below if you think Marjorie Taylor Greene has shifted left, publicly declaring that she had gone far left and accusing her of seeking validation from the very networks that worked to undermine him. Now, to MAGA loyalists, her body language said everything. She wasn't defending Trump. She was blending in with his political enemies, and that straight up crossed the line. Now, behind the scenes, insiders say that this feud didn't actually begin with Epstein files or TV interviews. It actually began months earlier when Trump privately sent MTG a poll showing that she would lose a statewide race in Georgia by nearly 20 points. And he did it quietly to spare her the public embarrassment. But sources say that she took it personally, interpreting it as Trump blocking her ambitions. After that moment, pretty much everything shifted. Critics argued the Epstein files angle became a convenient distraction, while conservatives now call this the biggest GOP civil war since the 2016 primary battles. Now, what worries Trump officials most is the possibility that the Soros Mamdani model could spread. Now, imagine this machine replicated in cities like, Philadelphia, Chicago, Atlanta, Phoenix. Cities already vulnerable to political radicalization. Critics warn of a domino effect, property seizures becoming normalized, mass tax hikes pushing out the middle class, transit collapses from budget black holes, and entire districts captured by ideological activists. Trump has said repeatedly that 2025 and 2026 are America's window to stop this. So if this movement behind Mamdani gains momentum, the consequences could reshape the nation for decades. Mamdani has become more than a mayor. He's now a political symbol heading into the 2026 midterms. Democrats are split. Some view him as the future of their party, while others fear he's a walking political catastrophe waiting to drag them down nationwide. Republicans, meanwhile, they're preparing to nationalize his clips, especially the abolish private property line and the $1 million donation scandal. Strategists say that these moments will be replayed in every swing district. For the GOP, Mamdani may be the most effective warning sign they've ever been handed on a silver platter. New York City is officially the test case. Now, if Mamdani's model succeeds or even survives, the rest of the country could face a wave of radical policies disguised as progress. But Trump has already said, if we don't stop this now, it spreads everywhere. The warning is clear. America is at a crossroads today. Will cities embrace confiscation of their property, socialism, political machines masquerading as grassroots movements, or will voters wake up before it's too late? That answer depends on every single person watching this show. So ask yourself, is this the America you're willing to accept?